we're supposed to have 11 participants. I mean, according to the list which has been given by Dr. Mardia. Okay, of course, we will include Dr. Afika in our session. So Dr. Afika is a MO master in our department. So personally, I invite her to join. So hope to get some knowledge from our seminar. So I think Dr. Mardia has briefed all of you that this is not really an official seminar to have discussions about the topic of measurement of uncertainty, and of course, I'm expecting this should be to have good conditions. So I'm hoping more interactions between me and of course with all of you. And then please ask me in between if you have any questions. And of course, since all of us are Malaysian, of course, I think it's good to have in Bahasa Melayu, but it's convenient for us to be used, whether you want to cakap Bahasa Malaysia ataupun you want to make in English, I don't mind. And of course, the presentation is in English, and I try my best to explain it in simplest way, because as I told you, the main objective is to know actually the but also how to apply it in the medical lab, because all of you will become a chemical pathologist. Okay, it's the future leader for, especially for the chemical pathology laboratory. So I think that will be our main objective today. Saya masih ya, semua sebab senyap ya kan.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I will share my slide. Actually,
Okay.
I assume that Dr. Mardia has circulated this slide. Actually, just see our teaching slide in chemical pathology lab, Hospital Sayang, and of course, we still need to admit some participants. I think you got the version from. Yes, I'm here. Yeah, saya ada online CME. Okay, so I mean the previous slide, which has been circulated by Dr. Mardia, actually is from Puan Siti Nolela. She's our former senior biochemist in Hospital Selayang, which has been retired last year, last November. So all the credit should be given to her. It's not only of uncertainty, but also to the presentation of today is based on our chemical pathology lab, but we are free to and share it with you, because I think all of us aware that there are a lot of colleagues here, especially the annual. And also on top of that, we also have the what you call it, the especially on the population side. Because honestly, back to my room is our meeting room. We are having kuasa meeting. So if you're speaking about the dispersion of the values, automatically, as the what you call it, as a laboratorian, of course, the dispersion of the values what the parameter to explain this is what we call as a standard deviation, betul? So SD. So for me, in simple way, MU is about SD. Personally lah, kalau saya nak fahamkan MU ni, it's about the SD, the standard deviation uh, uh, of testing that we acquired from our IQC data. So for me, that is about the MU, okay, dispersion of the values. So this is the guide to the expression of uncertainty in measurement, GUM. And in fact, I think the first document of GUM was in 1993, which has been revised maybe 2 years later. And then after that, the GUM is a standard procedure. I mean, as a standard reference for other association, for other body to have their own version for MU. Contohnya, that's what we can say. I mean, what the NATA Australia, the ISO 15189, okay, and also the UCAS in UK, one of the accreditation body in UK, they also use the GUM because this is really a standard reference for to calculate the MU. So according to UCAS, MU is a parameter, okay, associated with the result of a measurement that defines a range of the value that could reasonably be attributed to the measured quantity. So almost the same definition with GUM, our standard procedure. So for me, there are two words. I think it's about depth of the measurements, that is MU, and of course the dispersion of the result. Okay. So I think MU is whether to alert us whether we already reached the limit of these values. Sama ada kita dah breach the limit, the cut off ataupun tak. So that is about the MU. Okay, any question you just tanya. Kalau tak, saya akan rasa saya cakap seorang-seorang. Okay, now what is the difference between error and uncertainty? Because for me, there are major, there are big difference between error and uncertainty. And of course, error is the difference between the true value and the measured value. That is very obvious. And of course, in our lab, we always express error as a bias. Biasa kita akan cakap that is really a bias. But for uncertainty, is what we can read over there, the reported value that lies within the range of value with which the true value is asserted to lie in. Okay, so maknanya uncertainty for me in simple way is the range that to guide us whether we are still under control to say whether it is acceptable or not. That is the uncertainty. The dispersion is about something to do with the term of the SD. And I think to make it really clear for me in my earliest way, in earliest time during during my profession as a pegawai science, it's very difficult for me. But at the end, to make it really to make it really a better understanding about the MU is to say that the concept of MU is the same with the concept of what you call it, the control range in our IQC procedure. Okay, for example, if we set the control range of the 2SD, 95% confidence interval, if we breach that limit, so we consider that is outliers kan. So it's the same concept with the measurement of uncertainty. Okay, this is one of the classical figure. So I need to, I think the credit, this is also just to tell you that in one of the earliest documentation for the Ministry of Health, when calculating the MU in our chemical pathology lab is based on the AACB MU working group. Siapa-siapa tahu masuk AACB ni tak? Pertama tahu tak AACB tu apa?
American Association of Clinical Biochemists, right?
But in this case is Australian. Australian.
Australian. Dia ada
Yeah,
Australian.
because AACB, saya boleh tanya juga peserta lain, saya ada list nama ni. AACB is one, I think back in 2004, 2005, I think that is my earliest time as a pegawai sains junior masa tu. So I still remember during that time, my supervisor gave me this AACB MU working group punya guideline. So, I mean, you study, then you kira MU untuk semua analyte dekat lab kita, which is dekat masa tu dekat protein lab kan. So, memang that is really a difficult time for me. That's why I'm still remember about this figure. I mean, the figure here, I mean, just to show us what is what you call it, the factor which can be attributed to our MU calculations, because result kita could be I mean the dispersion of the result could be because of this as what you can see from the figure. But still credit to this ACB MU working group, because for me I think that is this document is really guide the medical laboratory to produce their own calculations, because honestly during that time we are based on what you call it jabatan kimia dan juga fizik punya guideline how to calculate the MU. Okay, but we will reach that subject after this. Okay, a common or familiar sources of MUs. Okay, yang ni biasalah. I think you can read all of the factors can be what you could contribute to our MU what you call it calculations or result in our makmal. And still, why we need to have MU as also as a final year chemical pathology subject? Why we need to bother the MU? Why you need to learn about this? And of course, in practical way to answer that, because that is also one of the requirement in ISO 15189, which is the specific standard for the medical laboratory. Okay, of course, before we answering this by using this point, of course, as a clinician, you need to know, I mean, we need to know what is the clinical significance of MU to guide you whether you are really producing or receiving the right result. Okay, so which you can control the dispersion of that particular result. Okay, actually, of course, back to the ISO 15189, of course, the lab shall determine measurement uncertainty for each measurement procedure. Maknanya setiap test yang kita declare dalam ISO 15189 should have their own MU. And of course, why we need to bother MU? Okay, medical the competency, the quality in medical lab to produce technically valid result. Okay, that is also one of the reason why we need to implement the measurement of uncertainty. And just to declare here, the Jabatan Pathology Hospital Selayang is an accredited medical lab since 2015. So of course, the MU calculation is one of the document memang confirm akan di-assess oleh auditor lah sepanjang audit dijalankan from 2015. And of course, we need to follow all the requirement. Okay, we have two type of approach to calculate the MU. We call it bottom up and top down. And bottom up, I have a difficult experience with the bottom up, which is the comprehensive examination of measurements. Of course, it involves a complex mathematical model, because we need to include all the factors. Okay, it's just like a fishbone punya model. I will show the figure after this. So in this case, I still remember in my earliest time, we learned from Jabatan Kimia. In fact, I have been sent there to, I think it's a 3 days or 2 days or 3 days course masa tu. So to learn how to calculate the measurement of uncertainty. And honestly, during our earliest time for the ISO 15189, it was around 2006 till 2009 masa tu, tahun tu. So at the end, we moved to the type B punya approach, top-down, which involve the evaluation of IQC, of course, imprecision, and EQA, bias data, which is more practical and in medical lab conditions. But personally, for me, type A is still relevant, especially when you are what you call it, producing your own method. I mean, if you have your in-house method, especially involving many manual steps, I think the type A is really a good choice if you really want to considering all the MU factors. Okay, if you want to have the a good reliable MU numbers, so you need to go for approach the type A approach. But for the type B, I think it's more in simple way lah nak cakap. I think for type B, I think that is more practical for the commercial kit. Of course, at the end, we are using the same approach like what manufacturers did. At the end, we have a proper method verification from the manufacturers kan. So at the end, that is also the justification or reason why a type B approach is really suitable for the medical lab condition. So nak jawab ni kena hati-hati lah. Kenapa kita pilih top down? It's not because of the simplicity, okay, but it's because of the establishment, how proper the method has been established in our medical lab. And of course, to answer your lecturer ke whatever argument, I think the type B is more relevant for the commercial kit lah, which is I think 95% dekat mamal kita memang kita guna commercial kit. But for me, type A is still relevant. This is also one of the example where we need to consider, I think, remember masa dekat Jabatan Kimia tu, kita kena list down all the factors just to produce what do you call it, our result. And then that can guide us lah macam mana how to combine everything in statistic, okay, to combine all the SDs, all the of course all the bias from this procedure. At the end we come out with the MU punya value lah. So this is what we call it as a type A, which is relevant for the in-house method, especially involving the manual many manual steps. And for the type B, as I told you that this is more relevant to the medical lab, top down. Of course, it's involved the imprecision and the bias data, of course, from our IQC and EQA. What we can read here is give some guidance, the relevant uncertainty components associated with the actual measurement process, okay. Blah, measurement uncertainties are being calculated using quantity values. Okay, change of calibrator. I think I will describe more after this. Example of the practical utility of MU estimate might include confirmation of patient values meet quality goals. Okay, I think this is what's stated in the ISO 15189. Okay, as I mentioned in my early presentation slide, for me, MU is about the standard deviation. And in fact, the U, of course, is from the what you call it, symbol of the SD, one of the symbol of the SD. So that's why, kalau in simple way, kalau orang tanya what is the MU, the standard deviations. I mean the MU, the main parameter is the standard deviation because it represents the standard uncertainty. Okay, the standard uncertainty is our imprecision data. Yeah, that will be the first take home message. The standard uncertainty dalam MU calculation always a standard deviation if you are using the approach B. Okay. Just forget about all the abbreviations in many of the protocols, because in this case, if we are following our on top of that, I lupa nak introduce. I mean, we also have a national guideline to calculate the MU. I think you are aware about the buku biru. that we have. I think it was a version of 2014 or 2015. I think you should aware that for the Ministry of Health, we have the guideline, a national guideline to calculate the MU. And of course, you can read that that guideline. And at the end, it's up to your jabatan, it's up to your laboratory to establish your own MU calculations. Because back to Hospital Selayang, in our case, we are not really what you call it, ambil 100% from that guideline. I'm speaking about our previous pegawai science, which is Puan Lela. I think also together with our head of department, chemical pathologist in charge during that time, Dr. Tengku, they thought that maybe it's the best way to what you call it, to combine the national guideline with other publication to meet our requirement in Selayang. So ramai yang tanya saya juga, which is the best procedure. So for me, the best answer is based on the requirement of your jabatan. Okay, personally, I'm attached with Hospital Selayang. So of course, I need to follow whatever requirements in the MU calculation in Selayang lah. And of course, but still on top of that, that's why the basic the basic MU data is our standard deviation. Okay, standard deviation which representing the standard uncertainty. Without, for me personally, without the long-term standard deviation of any of any of your measurement, so it's really impossible for you to calculate the MU. Okay, I think that will be the top take-home message. It's about the standard deviation, long-term standard deviation of your testing. Okay, the data obtained for a period sufficient to include all routine changes to measuring condition at least 6 months. So honestly, I also got some information from my colleague from other hospital. Some of them include 1 year as a standard in their working instruction. And I also interviewed some of the speaker, international speaker, because I still remember the answer is 3 months, because at the end, it's only you to justify, especially to auditor, why you are choosing that period of time. That's why kadang nak jawab auditor ni penting. Kadang-kadang auditor tanya, kenapa 6 bulan, kenapa 3 bulan, kenapa setahun, okay? Okay. Yeah, so you need to justify why you choosing this period of time. So the standard deviation is also expressed as URW. Okay, standard. So for me, I'm not bothering this abbreviation, but the most important thing is your understanding. So it's not only about the standard deviation yang you all dapat daripada testing system, but also you need to ensure that standard deviation is really representing dispersion of your testing system. Maksud saya, why I'm using that statement, because the standard deviation that you use for your MU calculation, you need to ensure that you need to first to exclude all the outliers. That's why I cakap tadi, to representing your testing system. Okay, and then and of course the N number, so bilangan QC data tu, that is also really what you call it, that something you need to consider, because the answer that I got from the international speaker why they are choosing 3 months SD data is because of the number of the IQC data. Because they said, okay, in one day it might be 2 or 3 times IQC data. that they need to run. So of course the and the test is running to almost 24 hours, 7 days per week. So that's why the 3 months is really enough to represent the long-term standard, to represent the imprecision of that particular system or measurement. Of course, if you're talking about standard deviations, we need to have like a plus minus sign, okay? Like what we have. So that's why to understand the MU, I think the concept is about the QC range, okay? Yes, sir, mostly in our QC range is 2SD. We always put plus minus of that particular range. It's also the same concept with the measurement of uncertainty, because anyway, the main parameter in the measurement uncertainty is from our long-term SD. Yeah. Okay, when attached to the measurement, it has plus minus sign. Okay, confidence level, when the U is not expanded, it has a plus minus, which is 68% possible value. This is also something, it's depend on the procedure. But for me, in simple way, how I would like to explain this slide is, of course, if we are talking about the SD, kan, we are talking about the SD, and of course, we have, I mean, in simple way, we have two type of SD. I mean, we are talking about the MU and also in our IQC range. And mostly, we are using the plus minus 2 SD, kan. I mean, that is really a classical way how to interpret our IQC punya data. It should be falls within plus minus 2 SD. And of course, if you're talking about the plus minus 2 SD, in statistic way, it's a 95% confidence interval. Okay, and of course, in back to 1 SD punya range, it's a 68%. Yeah? In terms of, I mean, if you want to expand it in the statistic, 1 SD 68, 2 SD 95, 3 SD apa? Almost 99 kan, 99%. So this is how we explain in the statistics. But speaking about the MU, I think most of the standard calculations to produce our MU punya range is based on 95%. Okay, that is also the reason why we need to multiply our standard SD with 1.96 kan. Mostly ada dua, ada in my case I will always darab 1.96, okay, to represent the 95% of confidence interval. I mean, that is the basic way how we interpret our MU calculations. Okay, 1 SD 68%, 2 SD is 95%. So consensus, I think also in our national guideline, we always produce the 95% MU. Mostly kita panggil apa? Expanded kan? Expanded MU. Sebab kita dah darab factor 95%, which is 1.96 ataupun 2 tadi kan. So SD can be expressed in CV. Okay. I mean, still, how to simplify this slide is, it's up to you anyway, because and also it's depend on the practicality with your data. For me personally, sama ada you are prefer to express your MU with the SD ataupun CV. Still, for me, I'm really convenient with the CV. Sebab CV, it in percentage kan. And of course, if we have MU in percentage, I mean, we just can automatically, we can multiply with any concentration of interest. Okay, any concentration of interest. For example, some clinicians are query about one of the tests, okay, which the concentrations falls in the abnormal QC range. I mean, maybe the concentration, the QC concentration is about 200 kan. Okay, if we are talking about the 200 of concentration of that particular testing, and of course whether to say I mean to interpret the concentration based on the MU, whether it is in control or not. And of course kita akan tengok MU data kan, and our MU data is 100. For example, the QC abnormal for that particular testing is 100, which we express CV is about 5% of MU. Maknanya kalau clinician query about 200 concentration, so of course we know from our MU calculation the CB is about 5%. So we know the dispersion of MU should be lies between 5% je lah of that 200 concentration. Sebab kalau kita express as SD, is really kita dah express dia dalam bentuk unit. Okay? Tapi kalau kita express as a CV, we can just simply multiply with the concentration of interest. So for me, personally, I would like to prefer to express CV in percentage dalam bentuk CV. But back to the selayang punya procedure, of course, we at the end, our MU calculation, kita ada data dalam bentuk SD, unit, dan juga data dalam bentuk CV, percentage. Okay, in the calculation of kadang diguna certainty of measurement kan, kadang diguna MU, measurement of certainty. It is best to combine. Okay, long term. Okay. I think the first take home message tadi saya beritahu SD is a must parameter to be included in the MU calculation. Tak ada alasan untuk tak includekan kita punya long term SD. But speaking about different approach ke pelbagai mazhab untuk kira MU ni, sebab I think what I have learned before, I mean I'm used with this what approach is to combine the imprecision satu. Speaking about imprecision, we need to consider the long-term standard deviation, okay, and of course bias. Okay, I'm used with this approach maksud saya. Bias which is we can get from our EQA. We need to consider the bias from the peer group comparison, whatever, as long that we have the bias data of that particular testing. And of course, to include the calibrator of bias, which you can see from the slide is uncertainty of the calibrator. For me, I have this experience memang to combine these three factors. These three factors for me, kita dah biasa kan sebelum ni. Memang we will include all of these three factors. But surprise lah. I'm so surprised. Masa balik daripada belajar itu 2018, the national guideline only considering SD from imprecision data, and then agak ni jugalah masa tu agak critical because anyway this is a national guideline kan. But as I told before that, yes, SD is, I mean the component of MU ni, kalau kita nak reflect SD, maybe I think more than 80% of the MU should come from our SD punya assessment lah. The other 20% or 15% maybe from bias or from calibrator. So fine with me. Masa tu I'm so surprised lah. Kenapa national guideline hanya considering the the SD data. So anyway, we have a lot of what do you call it, publication just to justify why SD is enough. Okay, and at the end I baca, okay, I can accept that. And also the good things is in Selayang we also combine the bias, which there's some publication to support this, which is included in our documentation in our WI. Unfortunately, tadi setengah jam sebelum my presentation, saya cari balik the MU calculation for Selayang. I thought I would like to display to you, but unfortunately, I'm very sorry. For some reason, I couldn't find it in our folder. But we'll see whether I can share later with Dr. Ma. At the end in Selayang, we can combine the bias with some justification. There's some statistics, okay? And then uncertainty of the calibrator, I tengok for last few years, it come back in the procedure because if you read what you call a recent publication or recent procedure calculating the MU, the uncertainty of the calibrator is look like back in the track. In fact, kalau saya tengok, saya tak boleh cakap jugalah, maybe saya silap. Tapi there's some what you call it, maybe the latest procedure of MU calculation, I'm talking about national guidelines, maybe we just can speculate. Maybe we only include the long-term SD and also the uncertainty of the calibrator. So I'm afraid the uncertainty of bias might be excluded in our next MU calculation procedure. But as I told you, it's up to your jabatan, your QC manager to decide or to justify whatever what you call it procedure of MU calculation, which is really fit to purpose in your jabatan. No? I mean, just to tell you that these three parameters is really popular lah, okay, with some justification to be included in the MU calculations. Okay. Soalan tak berkenaan tiga parameter ni? Okay, very clear kan? I think this is really basic. Yes. Yep.
Can you ask something about the long-term imprecision?
Sorry, about what long-term?
Imprecision. Tadi Dr. Amin cakap kita boleh pakai 3 months, 6 months atau 1 year kan?
Yes.
Do we need to input different reagent lot punya imprecision ke
Yes.
satu lot kalau number dah cukup dah tak payah?
Yes. Because honestly, thanks for a great question, because there is a debate about this. Because I'm talking about what you call it, my experience in Selayang, who are the one who are calculating all the MUs for all analytes in Selayang since 2018. So, of course, my approach is to use a single lot of IQC to represent a long-term SD data. For me, for example, okay, I'm talking based on the example. Because in Selayang we are using the IQC software called Unity, Bio-Rad Unity. I think most of you are really familiar with the Unity QC software, which has really convenience for the QC in charge. I mean, to monitor the MU, to calculate the MU, also the Six Sigma or whatever QC punya values or parameter. So my approach is to have what is the longest period of time for that particular year. I mean, the best period of time, the best IQC lot to represent the long-term SD data. For example, for 2022, for example, so we started to have, to produce the IQC data by using the lot A kan, IQC lot A. Okay. And then when I start to extract the data somewhere in September, October, so now I have more than 6 months already. So my justification is if I start to use in February, for example, until September, so I have about 7 months accuracy data to represent the long SD data. But of course, during this 7 months, kita gunakan reagent lot yang berbeza, betul. But still, the difference of the reagent lot is not really been specified in any of the MU procedure. I mean, it's not really, if you can show me any of the MU procedure to say that you should use the same reagent lot number to represent a long-term SD data to be fit in your MU calculation. So for me, my long-term SD data from that particular 9 months should be enough, because at the end it's really back to your jabatan punya WI. So that's why if you are if you are placed in any of the laboratory, you need to read first what is the requirement stated in your jabatan document, whether it's really 3 months, whether it's really 6 months or 1 year SD data. So then you need to follow that particular. But on top of that, my experience, you will have a difficult time kalau your working instruction stated you should have 1 year QC data. Why? Because it's really hard to get 1 year IQC data based on the specific IQC lot number. Yes, we can combine. I think I asked this question from to one of the senior biochemists in Selangor. Yes, if you don't have enough IQC lot number to represent 1 year, you can combine. Let's say you have the first 3 months, okay, and then last 6, and then the other 6. So at the end, you have 1 year punya long-term SD. There's some formula to combine those SD's data. Okay, but for me, still, I'm speaking with my experience in Selayang, which the 6-month data, 6-month SD data, CVI imprecision data can be easily acquired from our QC software. But still, we don't have really a magic number to determine whether our long-term SD data is really sufficient or not. Because I'm talking about my experience also to deal with some of the specialized tests, mana kadang-kadang kita buat per batch kan, by batch. Maybe if you're talking about the 6-month data, we only have maybe 20 or 30 IQC's data. If you compare with the routine chemistry, maybe for the 6 months or 7 or 9 months, you might reach more than 50 IQC's data, or maybe more than that. So, somebody also asked me a question, okay, Cik Amin, for this particular test, and dia 23 je. So, do you think it's enough to represent a long-term SD data? Yes, my answer is yes, because as what's stated in our work instruction, the long-term SD data is about 6-month IQC data. So in this case, I showed to her that, in fact, the data that I showed to her is based on the January till September, because fortunately, January to September masih guna IQC yang sama, IQC lot yang sama. I don't need to combine the SD data by using some statistical approach. So from January till September, the N value is still about 23, 25. So I told her this is the data that we have to represent this system. So as I told you, there is no magic number to say whether it's 20 ke, 10 ke. But for me, I think belajar dulu kalau you dapat more than 20, so you have the power of statistic is there lah, kan? Kalau you dapat 40 is a bonus lah. Tapi kalau you dapat 20, more than 20, in term of the power of statistic should be enough to represent a long-term accuracy data. But the most important thing, as I told you, the long-term SD data should represent the imprecision of your system. Because also based on my experience, kalau you ada 50 pun, tapi 50 data ke, or more than that, if your QC distribution is really wide, okay, dia punya dia spread to very wide, so CV dia besar, and of course at the end, kalau you tak include outliers pun, at the end the CV that you get in your MU pun akan besar juga. That's why if you have this experience in future, hopefully my advice is when you become chemical pathologist, please during the first 3 years to please calculate the MU. Jangan harapkan you pegawai sains je. Otherwise you will miss this opportunity, this experience. Because sometimes if you look only the IQC data, you can predict, what is the outcome MU data that you will require. So and also that's why to have the feeling, please do some practical, especially to calculate the MU data. Okay, am I answering your question, Doctor? Saya kadang terlebih pula
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we don't have a really magic number ataupun strict requirement about our long-term imprecision data. And of course, if you are using more analyzers, you need to know the formula how to combine the SD. It's really basic statistics. You just combine the SD by using the square root approach to get your standard uncertainty. Okay, based on the SLAYAC approach, we only include the bias if the bias is significant. We have some formula to say whether the bias is significant ataupun tak. So we have a ratio of bias over the imprecision. If that is more than 10%, so it's considered significant lah. So we will include the bias in our SD. So in other way, we need to assess our bias whether it's significant ataupun tak. Kalau dia significant, kita combine dengan SD kita. So at the end, we have the MU data. And at this moment, Selayang not really combining uncertainty from calibrator. But I foresee the future, maybe next year, we need to have the uncertainty of each calibrator yang kita guna kat makmal to be included in our MU calculations. So I think we need to be aware sikit lah. Mana bila I think masa you all dah jadi chemical pathologist nanti, you need to ensure that all the calibrator in your makmal should have their uncertainty values, and should be combined. Itu yang kita rasa dalam the next punya guideline. We need to include the data from calibrator. There's some, I think, this is a straightforward way to calculate the MU. So we just combine all the SD from our QC's data, and then after we get all of this standard what you call it SD, and of course we need to multiply with the Z factor 1.96, 95% confidence interval. So at the end, in this case, our standard SD from combining all of the three analyzers, 3.48, and we multiply with 1.96. and at the end, this is CV, percentage. At the end, we got 6.8% of MU. Okay. Sebab tu saya prefer guna CV because at the end, kita boleh multiply with any of the concentration of interest. Okay. For example, kalau the concentration of interest is 64, so we just times 6.82 of CV, so it should be plus minus 4. So the plus minus 4 is the uncertainties for the three analyzers for which test tadi, creatinine. Okay, for the creatinine result. So plus minus 4, creatinine result of 64 could actually be anything between 60 and 68 lah. Okay, this is based on the Selayang approach. Saya tak kata this is the what they call it, the best approach that you can have to calculate the MU. So in our case, based on some of the publication, so how to check whether our bias is significant or not, we have some ratio. So the ratio bias over standard deviation. So you bias with the SD. So kalau dia lebih daripada 10%, so we need to include the bias. So at the end, the data in Selayang, as I told you, mostly daripada SD lah. Okay, mostly from the long-term SD, which is really the true concept of the measurement of uncertainty in medical laboratory. Okay, MU with bias included using proficiency testing data. In this case, the example is FSH. We're using the chemiluminescence. Okay, TAR CPA, we're using the total error from our CPA. This is really one of the old quality specs that we have. Okay, we have two level of QC data, as well as the SD, the long-term SD. Okay, this is from our EQA bias. So at the end, the bias is about 1.1 unit. Okay, sama ada kita nak check sama ada our bias is significant or not. Of course, from our calculation, our standard deviation, standard uncertainty is 2.26. Okay, so 1.1 over 2.26, 1.1 from our bias tadi kan, and 2.26 from our standard uncertainty, from our long-term SD data. So we have the ratio is 0.49. Okay, so 0.49 is more than 10% of standard uncertainty, which is 0.226. The 10% of 2.26 is 0.226. So disebabkan our ratio is more than 10% of the standard uncertainty, so bias is significant and must be included in the MU estimation. If we have time, I will show you the Excel calculation. Okay, at the end for the level 1, the uncertainty, the standard uncertainty for level 1 is 0.23 because we include the bias. Okay, for level 1 is only for straight away from the standard deviation punya data 0.23, because maybe bias is not significant. But for level 2, we have proof that the bias is significant. Therefore, we need to include the bias data with the imprecision data. So at the end, we have 2.51 unit as our standard uncertainty for level 2. And we have the standard uncertainty for level 1. We have the standard uncertainty for level 2, and we just multiply with 2. Okay, our 95% Z value. Then at the end, for level 1, we have 0.46 unit and 5 unit for level 2. Okay, And then for me, this is enough data to represent the MU. I mean, I'm talking about the practicality of the MU data. So you already have the expanded MU data for level 1 and for level 2, but still, which is I'm not really mentioning in the earlier of my presentation, the what you call it, the application of the quality specification in the MU calculations, di mana kita kena tentu, we need to determine what is our analytical goal, whether to assess whether our calculation, our MU calculation is really a fit for purpose. So to see or to assess whether our MU calculation, and of course kita dah ikut prosedur dah. We have included the SD, and for certain parameter, in fact we included the bias with some justification. But still, the question is whether our MU calculation is really fit for purpose based on our own analytical goal. Sebab tu, in chemical pathology lab, each of the analytes should have their own analytical goal. Okay, nowadays, I think most of our reference is based on EFLM. Pernah kan semua dengar kan quality spec based on EFLM. The good things about the EFLM as a good reference to assess our the fitness, the fit for purpose of our MU data is they have CVI values. Okay, intra-biological variation data kan, CVI kan. I think CVI ada belajar kan Dr. Ma dalam ni kan?
Ada.
Okay. So, and of course, if you look into the EFLM punya website, they always come with the CVI of the three different values kan. Dia ada median, mean, and maximum tu kan. Dia ada three different range tu dekat EFLM. So it's up to your makmal to determine your own CVI based on EFLM. Di Selayang kita ada satu table lah untuk setiap analyte tu, di mana kita punya cut off, kita punya limit untuk setiap CVI. So in this case, the CVI for FSH is 8.7%. Ini data lama ni. In this case, we are using desirable spec for imprecision. So kita multiply CVI kita dengan factor desirable ni. So at the end, you have the values of 4.35%, or if you express as a unit, 0.26. So I mean to assess whether your MU data is fit for purpose ataupun tak, it should be less with your analytical goal or with your quality spec. Kalau based on desirable spec for imprecision for FSH, CVI 8.7 tadi, it should be less than 4.35 kan? 4.35%. So in this case, you have 0.26. .26. 4.35 is sama dengan unit 0.26. So your RW tadi is less than 0.26, which is 0.23 dia kan, the standard one. So less than 0.26. So therefore, it meets the desirable spec for imprecision. This also same goes to level 2 lah. But the basic concept here, I think I'm not all the department or hospital, I'm not sure whether they are really implementing this analytical goal to check fit for purpose of their analytical goal ataupun tak. Tapi still, I think personally, I think this is also the best way to assess whether your MU is meet with your quality specs ataupun tak. Kalau tak, kita akan short sendirilah. But kita producing the MU data based on our long-term SD, and unfortunately long-term SD kita pula CV dia pula melebihi quality spec for that particular what they call analytes contohnya. Tapi speaking about the analytical speaking about the quality spec is very subjective sebab it's depend on the whatever hospital dah tentukan, because some of the hospital maybe menggunakan EFLM as a quality spec, and some other hospital that are using CLIA maybe. Speaking about CLIA, of course dia lagi besar lah dia punya quality spec dia as compare with EFLM ke ataupun RCPA ke. Okay, so it's still based on your own requirement. So in Selayang, kalau all of our standard MU is before kita darab 1.96 kan. Kalau semuanya kurang daripada kita punya spec, so we conclude the method is fit for purpose untuk setiap level tu lah. So at the end, that will be our final remarks for every MU report yang kita produce Selayang. Okay, I will not talking about this because this is really about the three different approach for quality specs: optimum, desirable, of minimum. Because at the end, the take-home message that we would like to have here in our presentation is the long-term SD. Okay, the long-term SD is really an important factor to calculate your MU, and by the same time, it look like the uncertainty of calibrator might have an important roles dalam next punya MU calculation. But for me, to include uncertainty of calibrator is very easy because almost all the tests yang kita ada di makmal is commercially available. So we can simply ask the manufacturer to to supply all of this data. In fact, I think it's good also if you are dealing with the spec nanti specification. Kalau you nak beli new analyzer, chemistry or immunoassay system, you should put in your spec the requirement of the uncertainty of each calibrator. Maknanya manufacturer tak boleh nak mengelak. They need to supply us. So our part is to incorporate this value in our MU data by using some of the statistical formula lah. And of course, bias. Okay, the third parameter is bias. And this optimum, desirable, minimum is about the quality spec assessment, whether to check with your MU data is fit for purpose ataupun tak. At the end, is terpulang juga kat jabatan lain masing-masing nanti, sama ada you need to check with the quality spec ataupun tak. Okay. Okay, almost the end of the slide. A new guideline will include. Okay, you need to get ready to include the uncertainty of calibrator, and it's look like the bias calculation is not really compulsory in the next cycle of national guideline. Maybe this is the speculation that we heard. We'll see. Hopefully, end of this year we will come out with the latest guideline from Ministry of Health. And the second, okay, vendor must provide. Okay, seperti yang saya cakap tadi, you can simply ask the manufacturer or vendor to supply you with the uncertainty of calibrator. okay, if you have the calibrator, it's look like the measurement of uncertainty, you just combine the long-term SD with the uncertainty of calibrator with the square root punya approach, then you will have your standard uncertainty. And of course, from the standard uncertainty, you need to expand it to represent the 95% of confidence. You need to multiply with 1.96, then you will have your MU. Okay, long-term CV or SD, okay, CV, okay, SD. As I told you, saya personally, saya suka CV. Tak apa, you just express with CB and SD. No harms, kan? How does MU benefit patients? And of course, we need to detect whether, to assess whether it's random ataupun systematic. Then, one of the last topic, reference change value. Why RCV is important? And what is the difference between MU and RCV? Can anybody explain to me what is the difference between RCV and MU? Teman nak ke jawab soalan ni? Saya penat nak cakap seorang kan. Nak tanya pula. Anybody can explain to me what is the difference between RCV and MU? Kan kadang-kadang kan kita dapat soalan daripada clinicians kan. Kadang dia akan tanya chemical pathologist kan. Kadang soalan nampak silly tapi relevant juga. Kenapa, apa yang membezakan MU dan RCV? Any volunteers? Okay, apa cakap? Oh, Dr. Zakwan USM eh? Silakan Dr. Zakwan, sorry. Yes, betul. Okay. Okay, thank you, Dr. Zakwan. I think any other volunteers to answer? What is the difference between RCV and Dr. Zakwan? RCV and MU. Thanks, Dr. Zakwan. Mengantuk dah petang ni. Okay. So the point from Dr. Zakwan's statement is we have the CVI parameter in the RCV, okay, in the reference change value, which is more relevant to assess whether it's really a difference from maybe because in this case, I mean the point from Dr. Zakwan is we are considering the biological variations kan from the CVI. So in this case, it's look like it's more relevant to assess whether the two consecutive result is significantly different ataupun tak. Okay, and if we okay, thanks again, Dr. Zakwan, for the statement. Because if you're talking about the RCV, the definition of the RCV is the critical difference. So speaking about the critical difference is the minimum difference, of course, between two consecutive results. Because if you're talking about a two consecutive result, that is what we lack, what we call it, we miss from the measurement of uncertainty. As what Dr. Zakwan said, in the MU punya formula, we are considering mostly on the article part, which is the imprecision and the bias. But if you want to compare whether the two consecutive results are really significantly different or not, we need to use the concept of RCV, mostly from Fraser punya formula lah, which we include the CVI in our calculations. So I think from the clinician side, the RCV is widely used to monitor patients' treatment. And what we can see here is more relevant when you have a conditions where you have two different specimens or one testing that's been sent at the different time. So yang itu kita akan guna RCV, okay? Tapi kalau MU, mostly we used to what Dr. Zakwan said is what you call it to see whether the random or the systematic error from our analytical part is happening or not, is happen or not. Ini contoh saya dapat daripada Puan Lela. Okey, contoh keputusan kriterian pesakit from analyzer A is 230. Okay, 230 unit. Okay, so anggota makmal curiga, dia pun rasa curiga, pun tak tahu, curious juga curiga ni. So dia ulang on the analyzer B, two different analyzer ni. And then we'll see the repeated result is 250. So keputusan mana yang dilaporkan? In this case, that's when it involved the analytical path, then the MU data is really relevant, okay, to be assessed, okay, to be compared. So in this case, and of course, the data, the MU data yang kita kena ada should involve these two analyzers. This is also a reason why we need to combine the SD from, if we have two analyzers in Makmal, so we need to